Namaskar and a very good afternoon to all the viewers watching NCERT's live and interactive program. I am Shivani Jha and you have all connected with us through PM Vidya channel number 9. And yes, besides this, you can also connect with us on our official YouTube handles that goes by the name NCERT Official and NCERT PM Vidya Class 9. Well, let me apprise you all for this half an hour. We have our special program for Class 9 standard students. And the subject for today is science, and the topic that we have taken up today for all of you is gravitation part 2 from your textbook. Well, it means we have already done part 1 in our previous session. So, what will be the content for today's session? To delve deeper into this entire topic, we are joined by our expert, Ms. Sonika Saran. Ma'am is PGT Physics and MPhil. Ma'am, namaskar and welcome to our session.
Namaskar, thank you.
And yes, along with ma'am, we are also joined by our sign language interpreter whose name is Ashish. So Ashish, I also welcome you to our this session. Okay, well, in case, dear viewers, if you have any queries or doubts regarding our particular program or particular topic, then you can also contact us via phone or our email ID. Our phone number is flashing on your screen, which is 8800440559, and our email ID is dth.class9@ciet.nic.in. And as our session is live and interactive, so you can also drop your comments, your queries or your feedback in the live chat box option. And now we are starting our topic for today. And ma'am, firstly I would like to ask you, what are we going to cover in this gravitation part 2? So could you please elaborate us?
Yes, sure.
Yes.
In the previous session, we have already covered the topic gravitational force or universal gravitational constant, in which we derived the value of capital G, which was 6.67 into 10 to the power minus 11 newtons meter square per kg square. So, continuing to that topic, today we will be studying in detail about free fall, acceleration due to gravity, related to them equations of vertical motion, what happens when an object is dropped freely towards the sky, towards the earth, and mass and weight. And the remaining chapters, remaining topics like thrust and pressure, pressure in fluids and buoyancy, etc. we will be covering in the next session.
Okay ma'am, so shall we move towards our first topic?
Yes.
Okay.
So, just giving a quick recap to the earlier part which we covered, universal gravitational law, we derived an equation. In this slide you can see F is equal to G m1 m2 by r square. What does this equation mean? This equation means that if there are two objects of masses m1 and m2 kept at a certain distance r, then the force acting between them is equal to m1 m2 divided by r square, and this force is proportional to their product and inversely proportional to the square of the distance between them. But to remove the proportionality sign, we have to insert a constant which is capital G, and which is known as universal gravitational constant. This we already know. Now moving forward, we all know that what is Newton's second law of motion. Newton's third law of motion states that when an object applies a certain force on another object, the second object also applies the same amount of force on the first object.
We can also say that ma'am, every action has equal and opposite reaction.
Every action has equal and opposite reaction. So, the gravitational force, do you know what is gravitational force?
Yes ma'am.
Do you know what is gravitational?
So, could you please elaborate this
gravitational force, the force by which the earth is attracting any object towards itself is the gravitational force. So, this Newton's third law of motion also holds good for the gravitational force, which means that if I drop a stone towards the ground, then that stone will move towards the earth. But this means that if the earth is applying a force on the stone, will the stone also apply the force on the earth? So, the stone is moving towards the earth. Why not the earth is moving towards the stone? Because according to the formula or according to the rule, according to the Newton's law, earth is also experiencing the same force by the stone which the stone is experiencing. Okay. So, coming to Newton's second law of motion, we have studied that F is equals to ma, where m we know is the mass of the object and a is the acceleration produced in the object. So, students, you must be knowing what is acceleration. Acceleration means if we are going in a car and our speed is increasing, then we can see that we are in acceleration. A race is given to a car or our car is accelerated. G is the acceleration due to gravity, and according to second law of motion, in place of A we will write G, because whenever we are doing a linear motion, there we use the symbol A. But if an object is falling towards the ground, due to the gravitational force of earth, the acceleration is then replaced, A is then replaced by small g, and it will become F is equal to mg.
So, ma'am, can we know the difference between small g or capital G?
Yes, capital G is the universal gravitational constant, which is constant everywhere, which whenever two masses interact with each other. For example, these two objects are kept here. This object is applying force on this object and this object is applying force on this object. So, in this universe, every two objects applies force on each other. But
it
now
means
here we are,
human also produces
yes,
force
I am
on
exerting
each other,
force
yes?
on you and you are also exerting force on me.
Okay.
But this the amount of this force is very, very small, almost equal to 0, or we can say it is almost negligible, that we are static at our places. You are not attracted towards me and I am not attracted towards you.
Exactly.
But here we are talking about not about the forces between these two objects, but here we are talking about the force of one object with its relation to earth. Here we are studying about the gravity, we are studying about the acceleration due to gravity or the free fall. So, the Newton's gravitational law, which we have seen in the previous slide, was g mm by d square, which we can equate here by mg. So, the value of small g comes out to be capital G multiplied by m multiplied by d square. So, this equation is very, very important. G is equal to g m by d square. Here d is the distance between the object and the earth, and m is the mass of the earth. Mass of the earth is always a constant, and gravitational constant, which I have already told you earlier, that it is also a constant value.
Yes.
So, the value of small g will come out to be a constant. Here we can replace d by capital R. R क्या है? R is the radius of the earth. So, our equation becomes G is equal to capital G m by R square. So, are all the three values constant here? Capital G, m and R, are all these three constant? Yes, all these three values are constant. G is constant, capital M is the mass of the earth, will always remain constant. R
And
is the radius of the
also.
earth.
Yes.
आप इस
It
figure
always
में,
remain the
yes,
same.
you can see in the figure given alongside R is also constant. तो हमें जो G की value निकल के आएगी, that will always remain constant. Now, in this two particular figures, you can see that Earth is not a perfect square. ये इसका जो polar radius है, the distance between the poles and the center of the Earth is smaller than the distance than the equatorial radius.
Yes.
So, as we see that since R is in the denominator, if the value of R is less, then G will be more. So, we can compare here that G will be greater at the poles. G, we can experience great value of G at poles rather than at the spaces on the equator, because equatorial radius is smaller and polar radius is greater. Is it clear?
Yes, ma'am.
So, the earth is not a perfect sphere, as the radius of the earth increases from the poles to the equator.
Equators.
Polar radius is 63,057 kilometers and equatorial radius is 63,078 kilometers. So, the value of G will be greater at the pole and lesser at the equator.
So, ma'am, are we also going to calculate the value of small g
Yes.
and the big g?
Yes.
We can say.
Big G we have already calculated, that is gravitational constant, that we have
Okay.
already done in the previous
Okay,
session.
we can go by the small g to
Yes,
calculate its
yes,
value.
we can
Okay,
calculate
sure.
the value of small g. In equation, all these values capital G, M and R are constant.
Okay.
So, by putting these values, like gravitational constant capital G is equal to 6.7 into 10 to the power minus 11 Newton meter square per kg square. Mass of the earth is of the order of, you can see, 10 to the power 24. It's so huge mass. There are 24 zeros after 1.
Exactly, we can't calculate it.
We can't even
normally.
imagine. Yes, it's so huge mass in kgs, and then radius also 10 to the power 6 meters. So inserting these values in the equation, we get a numerical value which is fixed, and g acceleration due to gravity is 9.8 meters per second square.
Okay.
And for calculation purpose, to make the calculations easy, we usually take the value of g as 10 meters per second square. We round off the value.
Okay, so ma'am, can I ask you, like, what's the importance of these units, as you say, Newton meter per second square?
Yes, the unit is very important because we usually follow the MK system.
Okay.
If one unit is given in MK system, so all the units should be in MK system. Similar units, all the units converted in the MK system must be then put into the formula. Otherwise, all the calculations will be wrong.
Exactly, and I think it should be very important for all our students for the exam preparation.
Yes, yes. For example, in this particular slide, you can see that in the unit of G there is meter square.
Yes, yes.
Similarly, in the unit for the radius of Earth there is meters.
Meter.
If I would have taken kilometer, then my answer would have been wrong.
Exactly.
So units are very important here.
It would affect our whole
yes,
question.
whole calculations will be wrong otherwise.
Okay,
so
thank you so much, ma'am, for this information.
We have to stick, welcome ma'am. So we have to stick to one particular system like MKS system or CGS system or FPS, which is called foot pound system, foot pound second system. MKS meter kilogram second, CGS centimeters grams seconds, and FPS foot pound second. So we have to stick to either one of the systems, and nowadays we use MKS system only.
Okay, thank you so much, ma'am. So can we move ahead?
Yes,
topic?
sure,
Okay.
ma'am. So earlier it was observed that if a feather and a stone is dropped, or if two objects of different masses are dropped at the same time from the same height, then both will reach at the different time. For example, if I take a feather and if I take a coin, and if I drop both of these objects at the same time from the same height, then what will happen? Will you tell me what would happen? If I drop a feather and a coin at the same time, which of the two things will reach the ground first?
So it's very easy, ma'am. Stone will reach earlier.
Stone or a coin will reach earlier.
Yes.
Okay, but actually that is if two objects are allowed to fall freely towards the ground under the influence of only gravitational force and no other force is acting on them. For example, if I take a long glass jar and remove all the air from that, if I create a vacuum in that, and then I drop a feather and a coin in the glass jar,
And at the same time.
time from the same height, then I will observe that both the coin and the feather will reach the bottom of the cylinder of their glass jar at the same time, because now except the gravitational force, no other force is acting on it. When there is air, then the frictional force or drag of air will act on the feather, because the surface area of the feather is large as compared to its mass, but the surface area of that coin is very much small. So it will experience less drag of air, but the feather will experience more drag of air, due to which it will fall slowly and reach the ground lately. In that case, the coin will fall rapidly and reach the ground earlier.
Okay.
But if the air is removed from the jar, then both the objects will reach the ground at the same time, because now they are under the gravitational force only.
You force play a very important role.
Here
we can say in free fall.
In free fall, yes. It is only due to the free fall. It is only because of the gravitational force that the objects are falling freely. This free fall name is coined only because the object is falling only under the gravitational force of Earth and no other force is acting on that. In this figure, you can see that Galileo was a scientist. He performed an experiment and he dropped two stones two stones. Here in this figure, two stones of different masses from the Leaning Tower of Pisa in Italy. So what he found? He found that both the stones reached the ground at the same time. In the figure you can see that it shows that acceleration due to gravity is independent of its mass.
Exactly.
That I have already told you in the
Right.
formula, which is small g is equal to capital G multiplied by m capital by r square.
And gravitational
And
force is acting on these two
stones, yes. And that formula you can see that is independent of the masses of the stones.
Yes, right.
It is only dependent on the fixed values which are not changing. So the value of G
They
is
will
always
always
fixed.
remain
It will always
constant.
remain the same,
Okay.
irrespective of the masses of the stones or
Stones or
objects.
objects, yes,
So
yes.
both the stones will reach at the same time, yes, at the ground.
Okay, so this is all about free fall. So ma'am, is there any other topic which we are going
Yes.
to cover? As we are left with a very limited time, so we have to wrap up for now.
Okay, sure. So just quickly coming to the equations of motion, we have already studied, but here since we are talking about the free fall, so in place of s, where s is taken as a distance traveled, we just replace s by h, where h is the height covered by the object, and in place of a we take g, where g is the acceleration due to gravity. So the equations of motion can be v is equal to u plus gt, h is equal to ut plus gt square, and v square is equal to u square plus 2gh. These are known as the equations for free fall.
Okay, and ma'am, here I can see the negative signs also.
Yes,
So what's the importance of these negative and positive signs?
Okay. G, what is G? G is the acceleration due to gravity. So if the object is falling freely,
Okay.
it is experiencing acceleration, its speed is increasing because
yes.
Earth is attracting
the
it, pulling
object.
it towards itself.
Yes.
So in that case, we have to take G as positive.
Okay.
But since if I am throwing an object towards the sky,
Like we can throw a ball upside the
moment
sky, yeah.
I have thrown the ball towards the sky, the force of gravitation is acting on it every time. It is pulling towards itself. So when the stone will reach the maximum point or the maximum height, its velocity will become 0. What it is experiencing now? It is experiencing retardation.
Okay.
Its speed is decreasing, and at the maximum point, at the maximum height, it will have 0 velocity, and then it will start coming back. So in that case, we have to take G as negative.
Okay,
So I
thank
hope
you.
I am clear.
Yes.
So based on these questions, we can solve the equations. If we have time, then I can discuss, as you say.
Okay, we can normally discuss it within a few seconds, ma'am.
Okay, sure.
Okay.
So here's a problem, numerical problem. A car falls off a ledge and drops to the ground in 0.5 seconds. A car is falling off a ledge and it is taking time 0.5 seconds to reach the ground. G is equal to 10 meters per second square because object is falling downwards. So we have to use the equations of motion here. What is the speed on striking the ground? ग्राउंड पर टच करने पर उसकी स्पीड कितनी होगी? तो यू कैन सिंपली यूज द इक्वेशंस ऑफ मोशन हियर एंड यू कैन find out the answers.
Yes. Okay.
Just you have to take in notice that we have to see that whether the value of G is taken as positive or negative. Yes. So those minor things are important, otherwise all the calculations will be affected.
Okay, thank you so much, ma'am, for this wonderful explanation and this information as well. So here we have to wrap up this session for now, as we are we're left with a very limited time. So firstly, I would like to thank our expert for this session. So thank you so much, Sonika ma'am, for joining us today. Thank you so much. And along with this, I would also like to thank our sign language interpreter, Mr. Ashish. Ashish, thank you so much for joining us till last. And along with this, I would also like to thank our students, class 9 standard, and also our viewers for joining us for this wonderful session. And now, please have a look for our two important information. Firstly, it is for Balpan ki Kavita, and you can also see the video on your screen regarding that.
क्या आपको भी गीत कविता पढ़ने लिखने और गाने गुनगुनाने में रुचि है? तो आइए शिक्षा मंत्रालय भारत सरकार की एक अनूठी और सराहनीय पहल का हिस्सा बने तथा भारतीय भाषाओं और अंग्रेजी में लोकगीत और कविताएं भेजें। आप दिए गए लिंक पर अपनी रचनाएं अथवा किसी अन्य रचनाकार के गीत और कविताएं भेज सकते हैं। भारतीय भाषा कविता प्रतियोगिता के नियम आदि भी आपको इसी लिंक पर उपलब्ध होंगे।
So dear viewers, I wish you all the best for this competition. And also the second information is the new NCERT textbook for grades 4 and 7 are now available on Amazon, Flipkart and also on our NCERT official website. So you can also grab it on now. And before I leave, here's an information regarding our upcoming program. So have a look on our screen. So after this program, you can also connect us on 3 p.m. channel number 10, and the subject will be social science and topic will be power sharing. And after that, followed by 3:30 p.m. You can join us on channel number 10 again for the subject mathematics, and topic will be coordinate geometry part 2. And after that, you can also connect us on channel number 6 to 12 for 4 to 5 p.m. and the topic for today will be साइबर सुरक्षा के कानूनी पहलू. इसके बाद आप 5 से 5:30 भी जुड़ सकते हैं फॉर द सहयोग प्रोग्राम चैनल नंबर 6 to 12, एंड द टॉपिक फॉर टुडे विल बी सोशल सपोर्ट फॉर टीन्स पर्सनालिटी डेवलपमेंट. एंड एट लास्ट, एज इट्स फ्राइडे, सो आप हमारे साथ 5:30 p.m. पे भी कनेक्ट कर सकते हैं चैनल नंबर 6, 9 एंड 12. सो टॉपिक आप अपनी स्क्रीन पर भी इस वक्त देख रहे होंगे. वेल, थैंक यू सो मच ऑल ऑफ यू फॉर ज्वाइनिंग अस टिल लास्ट. एक बार फिर से मैं आप सभी का धन्यवाद करना चाहूँगी एंड नमस्कार.